Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today we're combining a little bit of historical research and a little bit of a make because I want to talk about something that I've struggled with over the years. Something that I've struggled with over the years as I've made and worn a lot of historically inspired skirts is the struggle of the waistband. Historical skirts, generally speaking, are not made to expand and contract with the daily lives of a changing body, for one simple reason: the corset. I know, everything comes back to the corset. In the 19th century, the corset shaped the body and provided the fashionable silhouette for the outer clothes. So yes, everything does come back to the corset. Often clothes were tightly fitted to the corseted body, and skirts were not that different. Waistbands were narrow and tight to reduce bulk at the waist and keep it there. Skirts often included a lot of yardage, pleated or gathered at the back, particularly towards the end of the century. This concentration of fabric leads to a heavy pull on the back of the skirt, which needs to be supported by a tight waistband, which realistically is only really comfortable to wear over a corset. You can also do a little bustle pad at the back. That's also an option, but that doesn't help with the waistband. Now, how do we fix this? I've been playing around with the idea of historically inspired adjustable skirts here on the channel before. But as I've made yet another shirred dress, I started thinking about that most modern of sins: elastic. Could elastic be used for historical skirts? I didn't recall seeing it on any extant skirts I'd ever seen, but that doesn't mean it didn't exist. Before we do a deep dive into whether elastic was used in historical skirts, let's take a moment to talk about our sponsor. This video is sponsored by FlexiSpot. FlexiSpot makes office furniture with the aim of revolutionizing the desk job and ensuring that working at a desk can be comfortable. And they very kindly sent me their FlexiSpot C7 ergonomic chair to try out. As someone who lives at their desk, my chair situation has been a hot topic for years. I need something that can support me for 8, 10, 12 hours some days and in awful goblin postures as I sew. And this, thankfully, does it well. You can fully adjust its features, the height, angle of the back, angle of the seat to fit your needs. My favorite feature though is the adaptive lumbar support. The adaptive lumbar support conforms to the spine when you're seated. It also has a wider and larger seat cushions. Unlike other ergonomic chairs, the seat cushion provides more room at 17 inches to 20 inches adjustable depth, ensuring better support and relaxation for extended sitting periods, aka when you're sewing all day, like me. It accommodates various sitting positions. You can also adapt the chair for a more relaxed time by reclining the back and pulling out the footrest. I use this for knitting all the time. FlexiSpot have a 30 days return policy and a 10-year warranty with direct replacement for any damaged parts. You can use my exclusive code C750 to purchase the C7 or C7 Max now and enjoy a $50 discount. It's the best time to upgrade your chair. So let's see. According to the Dictionary of Fashion History, India rubber, as it was called, was used from the 19th century onwards, and it was defined as an elastic or flexible material taken from the sap of rubber trees and processed to form various types of products. A patent for its use was registered in 1823. That is much earlier than I expected. This opened up a lot of possibilities. Surely it had been integrated in clothing. Well, searching through museums and online collections, the biggest trace of early elastic is in shoes, accessories, and then later in the 19th century, corsets. It was often used in shoes in the form of an elastic gusset that meant you can slip shoes on and off easily. It was used in some garments to attach bows or used as stays in skirts so that they kept their shape. The closest I found to elastic in a waistband was a mantle at the V&A, which had an elastic across the waist to keep it close. In corsets, it was used as side panels for gussets that provided gentler compression. And that was about it. I had little evidence that they would have been used in skirts, and I had to think it through. Why? My issue is that my waist changes sizes throughout the week, the day, sometimes the hour. And that is because I am not wearing a corset. A corset stabilizes your waist measurement, so that even if there is elastic in the corset, the waist would remain stable enough to wear the same skirt. This makes sense, but didn't help me with my issue. Then I found that in 1830, the Ladies magazine writes, "Among the recent inventions at Paris, an elastic stiffening of a vegetable substance has been invented. Instead of that spiral brass wire now used for shoulder straps, glove tops, corsets, etc., it is valuable because it neither cuts the cloth that covers it nor corrodes with verdigris. It is said to be made of Indian rubber and promises to be exceedingly useful in belts, etc. The French queen was pleased to express her approbation of some useful articles of dress made in the national colours of this material, presented to her by Madame Hebert of the Rue Louis-le-Grand. Exceedingly useful in belts. Indeed, once I started looking, belts seemed to have commonly included elastic in the 1890s and 1900s, my favourite time for historical skirts. There are extant elastic belts, and it was mentioned constantly in magazines. Here's 2 examples from Vogue alone. Elastic is employed in belting and has the great advantage of snug fit. In very broad black elastic, one sees a belt of perfectly simple build, made noticeable by an odd and handsome buckle, a large silver disc with beaded edge, having in its centre a large single stone of green, purple or yellow colour. Price $4.50. Belts are always pretty things in themselves, and a novelty in them is a source of delight. The dernier cri is the elastic belt, beaded in steel and jet with corresponding ornamental clasps. A belt, you say? With this thought in mind and 3 meters of plain brown cotton, I took to thinking up a late 19th century, early Edwardian inspired skirt that could include an elasticated belt. I wanted to keep it fairly simple to ensure I wore it again and again. The purpose was the adaptability of the skirt. So I wanted to make the belt matching so that it blended in, but include it with a little bit of elastic. I dug out my trusty skirt pattern, which is a hybrid between an Edwardian skirt pattern and an 1890s pattern, shortened to my preferred length. Well, I guess let's get to sewing and see if we can make this work. So I wanted to show you the result of all that hand basting and hand sewing. So here is my interlining fabric, which is a polycotton blend of some sort, just something I had in the stash that would work. It's a nice weight, it's plain, I really don't need it to do much. And then here is the bottom hem, which is a section of cotton organdy, which I have hand sewed with whip stitches across the top and then just large basting stitches around the bottom, and that's just because it doesn't need to be super strong there because it's going to be sewn up the hems and secured in the hem as well, in the side seams, so it'll be fine. It's just here that it needs to be quite nicely secured. And this just adds a bit more structure to the bottom of the skirt, particularly because neither of my fabrics, interlining or outer fabric, are like densely or very structured. Yeah, and the other thing I just wanted to tell you is that when I'm doing skirts with lots of panels, I do this, which is I colour code the panels according to pins, and then I write down what they are, and I do this across the interlining and the outer fabric as I'm cutting them out, so that they all I know, and then I always put the pin on the side closest to the center front so that I know which seam goes with what. And this is because I very rarely ever actually use notches in my sewing, but that is just one way I like to do it, so it's just an option in case you don't like notches. And now the next step is to baste this to the outer brown fabric, and by doing that I'm just going to put the wrong sides of each one facing each other so that actually the organdy will be hidden inside. And here's one I prepared earlier, just here. I've already started on the hand sewing because it does take a while, and I just do the basting across the edges with large stitches. But there is much more to do, so let's go back to hand sewing. Now that the pocket is in, I can go ahead and finish off all of the seams. So I'm just going to do exactly what I did here, which is just a normal seam, but then I press it open and I top stitch very close to the seam. And this is something that is in a lot of extant garments. It's very typical to see decorative top stitching coming in at this time. So I kind of like the look, actually. I think it makes it look really clean. And then in terms of finishing for these seams, I'm actually just going to follow what I saw in authentic Victorian dressmaking, which is with the top stitching there, and then I'm just going to pink the seam allowances and see how bad it frays. If it frays after the first wash, I can always just do a flat felt seam later on. Okay, so the skirt is at a good place, because now what I want to do is I want to stabilize the waist so that I can hem it and tuck it accordingly. So my first step to that is to finish off the waistband, and the waistband I've decided is just going to be a plain waistband, but I'm going to make it a faced waistband, and we'll return to that in a second. But basically what that means is that it will reduce bulk at the waist, because then when you add a belt on top, I really don't want to add any more. And then I also need to work on the belt, because I want to make sure everything works together before finishing the skirt. So here are my plans. I basically made sure that the belt is sort of my smallest measurement, kind of. And so the elastic portion is going to be a small bit of the back. This is no longer proportional, sorry. But basically the belt will be made in 3 sections with a small bit of elastic at the back, and then one on either side. So what I need to do this is basically make a really stable long rectangle that's into 3 pieces and seams and put an elastic in the middle. So I'm going to cut out these bits, and then I'm going to seam them, maybe interface it actually. I probably should interface it for a little bit of stability. And then I will put in the elastic at the back portion and the belt buckle at the front. And that should be really simple. So let's have a look. Hello. Please excuse me, it's been a day. But I just wanted to show you, I'm working on the belt. So the belt is just 3 rectangles, which have been interfaced, and I've just also top stitched the top and bottom, just so it has a little bit of decorative top stitching like the skirt. And now I'm just feeding this little piece of elastic. This is 6 inches, and I've made the section at the back that I want to be pulled in by the elastic, double that, so 12 inches. But also I wanted to explain why I made it a seam, and that's basically because you have to sew down the elastic, you have to anchor it to the belt so that it gathers. But I didn't want to do it just on the belt so that it looked a bit, I don't know, I feel like a seam makes it a bit neater. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just using a safety pin to feed this through, and it's been just a bit tedious of like turning things out, ironing them, trimming seams, that kind of thing. But yeah, so now I'm just feeding this through, and then I'll sew through those seams to anchor the elastic. And then I'll polish up my belt buckle, which I bought vintage on Etsy. I'll show you that when it's polished. And I just need to add the buckle to it, and that should be it for the belt. I can't quite recall the last update, which means it was way too long ago, so it's time for a little skirt update. So I have finished off the waistband and the belt, and you can see here that I've made the waistband a little bit wider just so that the belt has something to sit on. And originally I had thought to put in some belt loops, but I did a little tester and I thought they looked really ugly, so I'm not a big fan of that. Also, the skirt is too big on my dress form because my dress form is slightly too small for me now. But the skirt's looking good. The only thing that needs to be done is the hem. And it needs closures, so it needs snaps at the back and a hook and eye. And I was thinking of a way to attach the belt to the skirt so that it actually holds it up consistently. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add snaps so that the very center back of the belt will attach to the very center back of the skirt, and I'll see if that's enough. If not, I might try and add another hook somewhere, but my issue is that obviously I need to leave it space for it to expand, because that's the point, but it needs to attach to the skirt so it can bring it in. So yeah, some logistics to figure out when I try on. So for now, the goals are to finish the hem with the facing, add some closures, and also some decorative buttons along the center front here. For the hem, I am just finishing it off in my usual way, which is just a long facing. This is the same cotton as the skirt, it matches, and I've just cut some bias strips, some wide bias strips, out of the little bit of leftover I had, and now I'm just seaming it together so that I can finish off the hem with just a nice facing. If you want to add more structure, you could interface this, or you could add a bit of horsehair, a bit of canvas, a linen I've used before. But I actually think the weight of the skirt is fine, so I'm just going to do the plain cotton and then a bit of hand sewing, and that should be it for the hem. And that is it. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope this inspires you to maybe try and integrate elastic into your historical mix and make things a little bit stretchier. Thank you so much to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Remember to use the code C750 for $50 off the C7 or the C7 Max, and I will see you all very soon.